What's up, everyone? John Rettinger from Techno Buffalo here with the full review for you of the Pantech Discover. This is a really nicely spec'd mid-range phone. It offers a lot of bang for the phone buying buck. Let's go ahead and put it through its paces, see if it's worth your hard-earned money. Alright, so here is the Pantech Discover. We're going to break this review down into a few different parts. We're going to talk about call quality, hardware, build quality, display, performance, software, battery life, and then give this sucker a full review. It doesn't really matter what's powering this phone. If it's not going to make good phone calls, it's not going to be that much use to you. Call quality, as with most modern smartphones now, was actually pretty good. My 20 call test, I didn't have any drop calls, I had no white noise, and the caller on the other end had a hard time telling I was on a cell phone. It does have some cool 3D-esque speakerphone ability. It's actually one of the best speakerphones that I've tried. So don't worry about getting the Pantech Discover for call quality. It's going to work great. Signal strength when it came to LTE and HSPA Plus is on par with almost every other AT&T phone I've tested. It's nothing notable, either great or negative. One way to report there. Alright, so let's run through the hardware of this guy. It's packing some pretty premium-esque specs. So first, it's got a 4.8-inch LCD screen at the resolution of 1280 by 720. That's going to give it 306 ppi. It's running Android 4.0.4. It's being powered by a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core chip, a gig of RAM, 16 gigs of internal storage, expandable via micro SD. It's got a pretty beefy 12.6 megapixel camera on the back. We'll talk a little bit about camera as we get there. 2 megapixel shooter on the front. Wi-Fi is now pretty standard, 802.11b, G, and N. 2100 milliamp hour battery. It's got NFC on it as well. And it's going to weigh 4.76 ounces. And overall, it's a pretty nice package. A little bit of a different design here on the side. It was a design that I wasn't fond of on first blush. It's got these two giant chunky corners here in the top left and top right. But I actually found it to be really useful to pull the phone out of my pocket. If I put the phone in face up, it was really easy to grab these and pull it right out. And several people noticed this sort of had a Nexus feel to it. Pantech has really nailed the build quality here. It's a fantastic feeling phone with a bit of an odd design. So it's flat in the middle, then a hump on the top and a hump on the bottom, and then curved edges on the side. The display is also curved on both sides as well, and we'll talk about that in the next category. But they've really done an incredible job with the build quality here. If you were worried about picking up a Pantech because if you've used maybe one of their lower end models, don't let build quality be a reason to deter you. This phone feels excellent. The volume rocker up and down have a really nice push to it. Not something that I comment on very often, but these felt great. The power and lock button was really well pronounced. Everything about the phone actually screened pretty premium build quality, so hats off to Pantech for that. The other major important thing about a phone, though, is the display, and this is where the phone starts to fall a bit short. So I mentioned we got a resolution here of 1280 by 720, perfectly suitable screen and pretty commonplace for what we see on most mid to high-end phones. But when you take this phone outside or you hold it at a slight angle, the viewing angle makes this thing almost impossible to view, even at a slight off angle. If you're viewing a website, for example, you're going to have a really hard time seeing anything. Images were relatively washed out here as well, and video just looked kind of blah. I've tested a lot of phones over the years, and this one was really unremarkable in almost every way. So from a display standpoint, this is definitely not one of the better phones. Alright, let's go from display to performance. This guy's being powered by a dual-core 1.5 gigahertz processor. It's a Snapdragon variety. And sometimes it feels pretty snappy, sometimes it doesn't. For those of you quadrant nuts out there, it did get a pretty solid quadrant score of 5,551. But sometimes launching web applications, or really any applications, there was a huge lag. So for example, right now, I'll close everything that I had opened up here. 1 out of every 5 or 6 times, I'm going to go ahead and try and open the web, and I tap to touch the browser. Between the time that the keyboard showed up, sometimes it was very quick like you just saw, and sometimes there was maybe a 5 to 6 second delay. That was really representative of throughout the phone. Sometimes things were very fast, and when they were very fast, they worked really well. But it wasn't consistent throughout the entire experience of the phone. Now, that might be due to some third-party apps I tried not being coded the best, but you're not going to be using just first-party Google apps as you use the phone. Something to keep in mind if you're looking for really the fastest phone out there. This is definitely not going to be for you. But when it comes to doing stuff once it's open, browsing and things are just as you'd expect. Pinch to zoom works just as you'd expect. Everything else about it just works like a regular Android phone, albeit not the fastest one out there. All right, let's talk about software. Pantech's done quite a bit of tweaking and customizing to the Android 4.0.4 that it's built on. So first, let's talk about this launcher down here. The first thing I do when I start using a new Android phone is I'll pretty much download Nova Launcher. It's a custom launcher. This one is very similar. I love that stock out of the box. You have the option to scroll and place more shortcuts and folders here on the bottom if you choose, if the regular 5 here is enough for you. So I really like that Pantech has done that. I like that they've opted for the soft buttons as opposed to physical capacitive buttons at the bottom. So hats off to them as well. But things get a little bit cartoonish throughout the phone. Much more cartoonish even than Samsung's already sort of almost childish looking TouchWiz. Look at the phone, for example. Go ahead and see what the dialer looks like. Icons are very big, bold, and bright, and that's certainly a personal preference that it's not my favorite, but something to bear in mind. Pantech has done some cool stuff here as well when it comes to picking widgets. So as opposed to stock ice cream sandwich, when you want to get widgets and you go to apps and you go to widgets which ordinarily be living up there, that's not where they are. If you long press, this is sort of old school Android, you get a whole bunch of options here you can pick from. I love that settings is right there and easy to grab. You can go ahead and grab widgets, and the icons show up right here on the bottom. You can see about as much as you can on the regular version of Android, but you get a smaller preview of it. There's some cool animations too as you scroll through. I didn't mind this very much, but it's something to sort of relearn if you use previous versions of Android phones. This is where you have to go for widgets. Sort of other niceties here as well. On the drop down, you've got some colors here in the quick settings. Go ahead and scroll that guy back up. When you're in the browser, for example, as well, you get a little drawer you could pull up, and you go ahead and pick up some of your most used bookmarks. Found it to be actually a really useful feature. Overall, though, I really didn't mind the tweaks that Pantech had done. In fact, I found it to be one of the more useful. It didn't appear to be overly resource heavy either, which is quite nice. I would have really liked to have had Android 4.1 in here and had the awesome new Google Search and Google Now, but that is not to be had. Hopefully at some point, though, this phone will get that upgrade. All right, so let's talk about battery life. This is a 2100 milliamp hour battery, and it wasn't half bad, actually. I was able to get through easily a full day of weekend use with about 2 hours of phone call, some admittedly very intensive Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook use, and a lot of browsing, and about 15-20 minutes of video with about 40% of battery life. So despite not being the largest battery in the world, it really did a nice job when it came down to how long the battery could last and the use of the juice that it had. Worked actually very, very well. So battery life was definitely a thumbs up for this phone. So what's the final verdict on the Pantech Discover? It's not a bad phone by any stretch of the imagination. At $50, it's a pretty nice value. When you look at phones that are maybe $50 to $100 more, and it starts being tough to justify this. Certainly saving a couple bucks up front is nice, but over the course of a $2,500 to $3,000 2-year contract, that $50 savings doesn't mean that much. AT&T's got a lot of great phones in its lineup: the Optimus G, the HTC One X Plus, iPhone 5, Lumia 920, HTC 8X, to name a few, all of which are within that $50 to $100 difference in price. So it becomes tough to figure out why you would go and get this phone. I give Pantech credit for trying to get out of that sort of sub-market free phone brand and try and get to that premium standing, and they've done a relatively nice job. I would have liked the screen to be improved and performance to be a little bit zippier. On the other hand, though, I like their tweaks that they've done the software-wise, and I like the build quality, and these two little humps on the side really started to grow on me. So this is by no means a perfect phone, but it's by no means a bad phone either. If you're looking to get a budget phone with some pretty premium specs, the Pantech Discover is going to be a great choice for you. Overall, this gets a 7.5 on the Techno Buffalo scale. What do you guys think? Do you guys agree, disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm John Rettinger from Techno Buffalo, and I'll see you guys in the next video.